Hi, I'm Mark and welcome to Let's Vibe. So, the last video that I posted was a little over a month ago. and and yeah, you best believe so many things changed. And it was honestly like no more than 4 days after that video, um, everything just changed like that. And it was not in the way that I wanted or expected. Um, so, I talked about in my last video, I talked about how I'd had an amazing summer. And I definitely did. That summer was a manifestation in itself, and money was manifested. But here's the thing, and I know I've been very vague about my financial situation, partly because I've always found it hard to talk about my money, but also because I didn't really know exactly what was going on at the time, and so I didn't want to say too much. But anyway, I used to receive Social Security benefits, disability benefits. I received that for about 17 years. And back in April, last year, Social Security sent me a review, or they sent me, paperwork to fill out because they were doing another review. They do a review of the case every 5 years. And it had been 5 years since the last one. So over a year ago, I filled out those papers and I explained to them that I had experienced a lot of healing in the last 5 years. I wasn't about to try to make it sound like I was still struggling. I wanted to be honest. And yeah, so I told them that I was doing better and I had experienced a lot of healing. And I explained that I had been trying to build my own business with Reiki. And so I sent that to them, and it took almost a full year. Basically a full year to hear back. And I finally heard back from them back in April. And they had concluded that I was no longer disabled. And so while that was kind of a shock, I had also sort of seen it coming because, again, I had talked about healing. And yeah, I mean, the truth is, getting off of Social Security had always been a goal and a dream, because as helpful and life-saving as disability benefits had been, it's also pretty restrictive. It's not a whole lot of money. It's really just enough to get by. And I knew, I wanted more, and I knew I could create more and make more. But of course, the thought of getting off of Social Security and creating my own income was daunting after 17 years. So I was ready for it to go away in June. And I took a trip to the mainland at the very end of June, thinking that I had already received my last disability payment, and I had some savings, and so I was going to use my savings for this, to get through the summer and for this trip. And so I went to the mainland, I visited family, and I stayed for quite a while. And by mid-July, I received another payment. And I didn't know what to make of it. I was elated. I was so grateful. I was so relieved to just receive another payment from Social Security when I wasn't expecting it. And I didn't know what to think. I thought, well, it's possible maybe they overpaid me, or I thought maybe there was some technical errors having to do with like how my benefits were categorized, and maybe my benefits would still come in spite of the recent disability decision. So with that money, I decided, I took some time to really pray about it and meditate on it, but I decided to go ahead and extend my trip on the mainland and visit friends in another state. And I really felt led to do that, and I was fully trusting that, well, I'm still receiving money and it's, I can do this. Like, I'll have enough money. And I did, because I got paid again in August. And so by that point, I was like more or less convinced that, well, I'm still receiving payments even in spite of the decision. I guess it's because of this, technicality. Yeah. And so that made for a really great summer, because I was able to afford, to visit family and friends and do all of the fun things that I had wanted to do. And so that was definitely a manifestation come true. So then I finally get back home at the beginning of September. And I'm still expecting that I'll continue to receive the payments. And then one day before I was to receive another payment, I checked my profile, my Social Security profile, and bam, I see that it's gone. The benefits have ended. It's officially gone. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. My head was just spinning in that moment, because it just threw me for a loop, because I didn't know what to think. I just was believing that, well, this money's still coming. I don't know why. And I knew that I had been following my intuition, even though looking back, it was very risky. Because looking back, I now know, this is the crazy part, I now know that I was supposed to receive a payment in July. The July payment was the final payment, which means there was no reason for me to believe that I was going to receive a payment in August, but I did. And that, when I look at that, I see that not just as a miracle, but that was really manifestation in action, because I went into the month of July fully believing and trusting. I did have some anxiety at times, but I was trusting that I'm going to receive this money, and I did. And that was a mistake on Social Security's part. That was an overpayment. But it's just wild, because there was no reason for me to believe that. But I did, and it happened, and it was miraculous. So, come the middle of September, it's gone. It's finally gone. And I was shook to the core. My rent was due in like 5 days, and I had about $200 left. So that was rough. That was some scary moments, some really, I mean, I really had to take some time to collect myself. I immediately called my mom because, I mean, that was really the only person I could fall back on in that kind of situation. And I'm glad that I had done so much healing work around my relationship with my mom, because that made it much easier to make that phone call. Although that phone call was still pretty hard. It was hard to be like, hey, yeah, so the money's all gone and I have nothing right now, and rent is due in a few days. Thankfully, my mom was able to help me for that month, and from that moment, I knew, okay, everything has changed now. Everything has changed, because this way that I've lived and this source of income that I've had for so long is finally gone. And I don't have the source of income from tarot and Reiki that I had been hoping to build by that time. I didn't have it. Now this year I've definitely made more money through tarot and Reiki than I have in previous years, but it's still not nearly enough, to get by. So I didn't really have, I spent all my savings. Over the last 5 years, I used up all the different savings that I had. So I had nothing to fall back on. And my mom, could only help me so much. I couldn't keep going to her, and I didn't want to. But yeah, I had nothing left. So, needless to say, that was pretty scary. It was mind-boggling, just, such an abrupt change. Thinking and feeling like I had this stable source of income, and then in the next minute, it's gone. And I don't really have anything to fall back on. So that truly put me at a crossroads, a very difficult crossroads, because I then found myself facing the exact situation, the exact dilemma that I had been so adamantly against, and trying to avoid, and trying to make sure that it wouldn't happen. And it was happening. And that situation, that dilemma, was the prospect of having to go back to some kind of normal type of job. And the reason that was such a big deal and such a big moment is because I had had such a tumultuous relationship over the years when I was younger, especially in my 20s, because of the complications of depression and mental health issues that I was dealing with at the time. My relationship and my experience with jobs, with regular 9-to-5 type jobs, was so messy and so bad. It just was, looking back, I can see that a major part of The problem was simply that I was not well at the time. But we live in a society that pretty much worships work and having a job. Having a job is extremely important. It's not just practical, for practical reasons to make money and to get by, but having a job is tied to our self-image, our self-esteem, how we look at other people, our ideas of productivity versus laziness. I struggled with that so hard in my 20s and early 30s. Because in spite of the fact that I was struggling so much with depression and anxiety, most of the people in my life were still, all they could think of was, you need to find a job, you need to get some kind of work, that was all they could really think of. And so there were many times over, I would force myself, I would try my best to hold down a job, even while very ill. And it just did not work. And it was awful. It was just an awful experience. And it reached a point where I just was so fed up and so tired. And this was back in 2020. And this is when this whole spiritual journey started. But in 2020, when I lost my job due to the COVID lockdowns, I was so tired at that point, and I was so relieved that I had lost the job that I had, because I hated it. Again, I hated it. It was just a repeat of every other job experience I'd had. And it was because I still had not fully healed. I had achieved a lot of healing by that point, but it still was not enough. And so in 2020, I decided I'm not going to go back to these jobs. I'm not going to keep repeating this cycle of, having to quit and feeling like a failure and hating what I'm doing every day. I'm not going to keep doing that. And so that's when I started my spiritual journey. And I decided, well, I'm going to make money. I'm going to create my own income through divination, tarot, Reiki sessions, and all that. And I even hoped that I could make money through YouTube. And that was, in 2021 is when I started this channel. And part of the reason I wanted to start the channel was in the hopes that maybe I could generate some income. So, fast forward to last month. No money left, no money coming in. And I felt like I was back in the same spot that I had been 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And for a moment, it felt like I had gone backwards. It felt like I had completely failed in everything that I was trying to do. It felt like a cruel joke. I had some moments of just screaming at spirit. And by taking some time to get calm, to meditate and really quiet myself and tune into spirit. I don't know why I'm getting teary-eyed, but by tuning into spirit, I could see. I could see that even though this looked on the outside like the exact opposite of everything I wanted, and it looked like a complete failure. I mean, I thought when I got the news, when I saw the reality that I had no more money coming in, one of the things I thought about was the video that I had just made and posted on this channel, because I had said in that video, you know, I did it, I'm secure. And I am secure, but I thought of that video and I felt ashamed. I felt so embarrassed. You know, that was another thing that was difficult about it all, was I was like, you know, what do I tell people now? After I've just spent the last 5 years trying to explain to people why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm pursuing this spiritual path, and how I don't want to, you know, do those regular jobs because they don't fit with me, they don't align with me. What do I say now that I have to do this job? I have to do a regular kind of job now, because that's the only source of income immediately available. And I realized, and I knew that, you know, it was not gonna be a good idea for me to try to, you know, manifest all the money that I need by, you know, without, I just knew in that moment, I'm gonna have to do some kind of job. I'm gonna have to. And really, I was being led to it. It was not, you know, out of alignment. And the reason is because as I meditated on it and meditated on everything and tuned into source, I could see that what was actually happening was there had been a massive paradigm shift in my life. I wasn't back at square one. I wasn't back where I started. It looks like it on the outside, but the truth is, you know, I was down here 5-6 years ago, and now I'm up here. And yes, it's on the same, you know, plane, or not the same plane. It looks the same, but it's on a much higher frequency. And I realized so much has shifted in the last 5 years within myself and about myself. So much has healed. So much has been released over the years. So much has been unraveled and healed and examined and cleared. It's not just that I'm a different person. My entire paradigm had changed, meaning I no longer have to look at these jobs as the hell that I saw them as, the hell that I experienced back in my 20s. I no longer have to look at them, and I no longer have to experience them the way that I did in my 20s. Because nothing is the same. Oops. Nothing is the same. And it's hard to explain it and describe it, but it was such, you know, I realized that such a massive shift had slowly taken place over the years, that old story and that old experience was gone. And the only thing that remained from it were the memories. So what I ended up doing, what I felt led to do, was I ended up getting a job at a coffee shop, a local coffee shop. It's, you know, just a single location type of shop. It's not some big company or corporation. And I'm basically just working with and helping the owner of the shop. And it's been really, really interesting. You know, I started working at this coffee place at the very end of September. So I've been at it for a few weeks now. And it's been very, very interesting because it's been, of course, there's been ups and downs with it. I've definitely had to walk through old patterns of thinking and feeling, because for me, over the years, the workplace had all of these triggers, and it wasn't just about, you know, trying to work when I was ill in my 20s. It was also triggers having to do with childhood experiences, trauma. But I've had to walk through that and remind myself that it's just memories. It's not my reality. It's not who I am. I'm not that scared, vulnerable person anymore. I have boundaries. Boundaries like I've never had before. I have strength. I have the ability to, for the most part, control what I'm thinking about, what I'm focusing on. You know, I'm still practicing, but I'm a lot better at it than I was 5 years ago. And so the whole game is different. The whole system is different. I'm different. And so working this job has not been the painful, awful thing that it would have been years ago. And all of the triggers are no longer what they used to be. They no longer have the power that they used to have. And my whole concept and perspective of this job and doing this work and making money to support myself, all of that has shifted, because in the past, those jobs that I tried to do when I was still depressed, it felt like a trap. It felt like it made me scared to think of being stuck in a job that I didn't really enjoy, a job that was taking more energy than I could restore, than I could recover. It scared me to think of spending my life doing something like that. But I no longer have to look at it from that perspective. And so it's really wild. It's so unexpected, but also it's like, in some ways, it, at least from a higher perspective, it makes sense, because it's like, with this healing, I do believe and I do feel like I really did close out 5 years of healing work. That was like a 5-year cycle, and I did officially close it out. And I think the official moment was, you know, when that money was gone. But it's closed out. And so it's like a clean slate, a totally clean slate. And the job that I'm doing is not, you know, my life and my future forevermore. And it's, you know, one of the things that's come to mind is that this is giving me the chance to restart from a much higher frequency. and to rewrite the stories that I had lived by for so long. And I have so many more tools within than I used to have. And yeah, there are still moments where I really don't understand things and it feels really frustrating, and I do still kind of go back and forth into the old anxieties and fears, but I'm always pushing forward. What I see in this is like a whole new idea of freedom, a whole new perspective on freedom and my own life. And, you know, whereas in the past, all of these jobs and making money felt like some lifelong trap that I was trying to avoid, now I can see it as like, I'm blending the practical with the spiritual. I'm blending the practical with the mystical. You know, I'm doing this very practical kind of job, and I'm also walking a very mystical path. And yeah, I certainly don't know what's ahead. I have my ideas and dreams of what I'm wanting still, of course. You know, I'm still wanting to manifest more money, more income, and be more secure in that way. But what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, this has been a pretty crazy last 2 months. Oh, I remember now what I was trying to say earlier. I don't see what's up ahead really. In recent weeks, that has it's really felt like, okay, now I really don't see the next steps, and I'm really moving by faith, by trust, by intuition. So I kept thinking about making another video to follow up on the last one, and I finally wanted to sit down and do that and just share with you all how things have developed and how things have changed in such an unusual and such a surprising, unexpected, very odd way. Because they always say, you know, this journey, the manifestation journey, it's not what you expect, and in this case, it's nowhere near what I was expecting. But we'll see what's next. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment. I love to hear from you, or a question. If you have any questions about manifestation, I might be able to offer some insight, but I'm definitely still learning. Yeah. And once again, thank you so much for vibing with me.